My name is Angela Brackett. Some of you I know, some of you I don't. Some of you will get to know each other tonight. I started Enviro Equine about 12 years ago now. It's been an interesting ride. I started with just our Omega Balance oil and our very basic gastrointestinal support product. So for the first 3 years, that was pretty much all I had to sell. And then we started expanding, and now we have probably 60 different products. And I actually sold Enviro almost 4 years now in April to Limb Group, who also own a number of the saddle brands that you guys probably are familiar with. And it was pretty exciting for me because I started it with no bank loan, no anything. So it was always just based on sales and all of this. So now we've been lucky enough to have the proper funding, and the exciting partnership with Alltech has actually come from that. That said, I've worked with Alltech for almost the entire time that I had the supplement brand, for probably about 10 years, because I am very close. I have very close ties with Ireland. We spend a lot of time there. My son has both of his passports, so we spend a lot of time in Dublin, where Alltech has one of their headquarters, and they started a lot of their testing, and they've done their testing on my uncle-in-law. I don't know, is that a thing? Uncle-in-law? I don't know. His yard in Dublin for many years. So that's where the partnership kind of started. And now, as of September this year, our main 3 products we've reformulated and made even better with some of the new technology from Alltech, which is really exciting because all of their ingredients are fully backed with research, which is not a normal thing in the supplement business. We know that there's a lot of fact or fiction, hence the little quiz that you guys got. And Tim, if you want to, this is Tim Karl. He's head of the equine division at Alltech. They have a facility both in Lexington. It's really amazing. If you guys have never driven by, even, you guys should. They have their brewery downtown, which is really great too. But without further ado, Tim, if you want to.
Someone in the center. Yes, thank you. All right. Well, I appreciate it. We're really excited about the partnership that we've, as Angela said, has been doing with Alltech for quite some time, and we've expanded it significantly in September. As Angela said, Tim Karl is my name. I'm our director of lifestyle and companion animal for Alltech. I've been in the feed industry, or the industry in equine, for about 25 years, worked for some major feed brands over those years. And then in 2020, was given a really unique opportunity to come on board to Alltech to become their director of their equine division. So it's been a fun ride, and I'm going to go through a little bit about Alltech here. We've got these nice handouts and things. But first off, I just want to ask this, put your hands up if you're familiar with Alltech or you've heard of Alltech. Oh, okay. Curious, where have you heard of Alltech from? Okay, yep.
Oh my gosh, your dollars are coming back.
Yes. Anyone else over here? Who knew of Alltech over here? Thought we had a. Okay, Horse Park. So that's where it brings me to the next point around Alltech and equine is we do a lot within the equine business, and obviously some of you have heard of us there, but we have an incredible amount of brand recognition within the equine space. Just about anyone I talk to in equine, I say, do you know Alltech? They're like, yeah, we know Alltech. Sometimes it's, hey, how do we use your products or get your products? Because we know you are based on science and research, but we don't always know where to find that Alltech technology. So these partnerships, like with brands like Enviro Equine, are important for us to be really to help carry the technology through a brand, and it's a win-win situation. So we've the 2010 games, we sponsored that. Yeah, you're shaking your head. That was a big Alltech endeavor. We then followed it up with Normandy. So had a tremendous amount of equine recognition, and a lot of those investments are what has caused this overall brand recognition in equine. We also have a sponsor. We do a lot with WEC. We've got a sponsorship there. So if any of you ever commute back and forth, we're there. We do some things in other markets like Traverse City Horse Shows. We've got a presence there. And then Chicagoland, which is where I'm from, if any of you guys are from there. So anyway, that's a little bit about Alltech. Now let's talk a little about the supplement business. And I'd be curious, anyone can raise their hands. I'd love to know what kind of supplements you're using. Equine supplements, oils, okay. Okay. What about over here? What are some common supplements in the feed room?
Ulcer supplements.
Okay, gut health.
Probiotics.
Probiotics, yep. Great answer, by the way. You'll see why that is coming up.
Probably Enviro Equine products.
Okay. Oh, that is the best answer right there.
Girl, we paid you.
What about you guys in the feed room? Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
What about down in this corner? Kind of supplements?
Electrolytes and a couple of them get a gut supplement, but really we don't feed much.
Okay.
Electrolytes and vitamin E.
Okay. Okay. Familiar with KER, right in Kentucky with us. Supplements?
Vitamin E, selenium, electrolytes.
Okay. Yep. Okay. Great. I think you can see from my style, I like a little more, some interactive stuff in these presentations, especially when we're going through handouts here like this. But in any event, all right, I'm going to go through some of the handout here next to get into a little bit of the more of the nitty gritty. You can see on the top of the handout, first page, our beautiful headquarters in Lexington, in Nicholasville, Kentucky. That's where our headquarters is there. We've got a research farm. You can see the red buildings in the back where we have 15 geldings there that we do some testing and some things on there within research. We've got a nutrigenomics center on site. We've got a manufacturing facility on site also for our additive products there. So Angela touched on this initially, and this is a really important part. So if you're going to take away anything from me being up here talking to you tonight, it's going to be this next piece, is that everything we do within Alltech, our technology, if we release a product or we back products, it's all backed by research. And there's a couple of slides in here that go through more specifics around why that's important. But it's something that if you're feeding a supplement today, okay, or someone's telling you to, hey, why don't you try this supplement? There's a few things that I would ask them if I was in your shoes. Number one would be, is this supplement and these ingredients in here, are they researched? Yes or no? Okay. You may get an answer, well, I don't know, or yes, there's been some research done maybe in some other species that is related, or some anecdotal stuff or stuff from the human side. I mean, there's all sorts of things like that out there within the supplement world. So the other thing I would ask is, okay, you might have some research, but is it equine-based research? Is this research actually on horses? Which I think is also very important.
I'm going to pipe in on that a little bit, because there are not very many companies that can say that because of the amount of money that it takes to be able to do that. You do see, that's why a lot of companies will pull from other species, because there's not a lot of equine specific research out there.
So very, very important. Then the final thing is, okay, if they say, yeah, we've got research, it's very simple to say, hey, can you email me those studies? Okay, where can I find the white paper that's on that particular additive or that supplement from a scientific standpoint, so that you can make the most informed decision as possible. So at Alltech, we have over 100 dedicated scientists at 5 biocenters across the globe. We work with universities also, so we'll partner. We do a lot with University of Kentucky, which is right there in our backyard, where we will partner on different research projects. They usually sometimes have more equipment and things to do some stuff that we can't do at the research center, but we can collaborate with them there. And then we have what's called these global alliances, where we invest with these companies to come together on certain topics, where there's a collaboration there on cutting edge research topics. Alltech is also, as I said, we're a global company, and we have over 5,000 employees at Alltech. I think latest count is 5,800 employees worldwide in Alltech. We represent 40,000 different customers across the globe in over 120 countries, and we've got 80 manufacturers strategically throughout the world. So what specifically do we do at Alltech? Okay, so first and foremost is specialty ingredients, and that's what's most applicable here. The specialty ingredients would be our pre, pro, and post biotics, our organic minerals, our Cellplex, our selenium yeast, things like that. That's our specialty ingredient division, where we actually create those at our facilities and manufacture those and then sell them to either distributor, mostly through distributors, and then they will utilize our technologies in their products, like we do with Enviro Equine here. We own a premix company called Ridley Premix, and we've got a premix plant in Mendota, Illinois, and then one in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. So I don't know if you guys know your Midwest geography or not. You've been laughing over there, but there is where is companies, feed companies, supplement companies that not only will use some of our additives in their blends, but they will also have their vitamins, their minerals, their inorganics, and other blended into one blend that they'll put into their end product called a premix. Supplements, obviously we do a lot of stuff. We do some toll manufacturing within supplements. We do some co-packing, things like that for customers. We don't necessarily have a brand of supplements in Alltech. Our strategy is utilizing our technology like we are doing and partnering with companies like Enviro. And then the feed. I'm sure you guys all know the feeds. That's actually my 25-year background, really. I've done a lot with feed. So if you ever have equine nutrition questions, kind of your guy. But we have a feed division called the Ridley Feed Division. If you've heard of the Hubbard brand, that's a feed brand that we have across the Midwest. We also have a company called McCulley's. You guys have heard of in Kentucky, where we have a beautiful equine-only feed mill there. Only equine, no medication, no other species. It's very unique. We do a lot of business, probably 90% of our business on the racing side and the breeders all across Lexington and the East Coast. So we got the feed division, 20 plants, and then finally biologicals. We have a crop science division that does natural biologicals, where we work with farmers and things like that there. So it's a little bit about Alltech. And so when you think Alltech and equine, when I was going around asking about the supplements, gut health came up a lot. We started in 1980 and founded our company within gut health. We are the gut health leaders, I believe. Obviously I work there, but I do believe we have some of the most research out there on gut health in the world. So thinking about how we can support horses, it's micronutrients, and our core focus is improving gut health and nutrient absorption in horses. And that is another thing to walk away from. Okay, what does Alltech do? Gut health, gut health, gut health. That is our expertise and where we have built our brand and where we can be the most impactful in equine. And the next slide is great. You can keep this for your refrigerator or something. But it talks about why gut health and immunity is so critical in the horse. It's an excellent illustration of the horse and the digestive system within the horse. And it shows how important gut health is. You can see these stats. 70% of immune function is through gut tissue. So making sure you treat the gut right is going to help with immune function. 90% of diseases can be traced back to the gut health and microbiome. And then 30% believe of the energy requirements come from the gut. So when you want to demand performance, you got a healthy gut, it's going to help there in that setting. Okay, now, how does this all apply? Next slide here. These are the functional solutions that we work within Alltech and work with Enviro Equine within their products. We have pre, pro, and postbiotic products. These are, you guys all know, I heard a number of things about probiotics and things. So we do that. Everything we have is from yeast extracts. Our yeast patent is the yeast 1026 specific strand, which is where all of our products come from. We ferment that yeast and then we create our products off of that yeast molecule. It's pretty impressive what we're able to do with yeast. Yucca extracts is something else that we have. We'll actually go through this here on the next couple slides, that there's an ingredient in the Gastro Plus product that's called deodorizine, and it's derived from yucca. And you guys have probably used sweet PDZ before or any of those. This is actually a ammonia reduction product that can be fed through the horse. So it's a really neat product that's in there.
So when we're talking about lung health.
Yep.
that's a major thing, obviously, because we know a lot of bleeders start with fungal infections first, and what are they breathing all the time is your ammonia. So if you can reduce that, we know.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have digestive enzymes in the products we do stuff with. We have a product called Veg Pro, which is a natural enzyme. A protonated trace minerals, that's our Bioplex, which I'll talk about, our true chelated trace minerals. And then where you may have heard of us from a specific product standpoint will be our product called Cellplex. Maybe that rings a bell, but that's probably our most popular Alltech product. It's organic selenium yeast. Okay, that's it for the Alltech stuff here. So when I was working with this on with Angela and some of the topics and things, one of them was this marketing versus research on equine supplements. So I'm not going to go through every piece of this here, but I think it's really good information for you all to look at and read around the difference. And thinking about the supplements used today, as I said earlier, make sure that they are equine researched products versus just researched or soft claims. There's a lot of supplement companies out there, like I said, they'll just have soft claims. There won't be anything to really back up the data. And if you think about marketing-based equine solutions, the emphasis is typically on, from a marketing standpoint, branding and consumer appeal. Some of the claims lack strong scientific backing. You'll see a lot of buzzwords, heavy use of buzzwords and testimonials. So you'll see people, hey, this person used our product and look how great the horse is and all that stuff. I know that stuff's important, but if it's not backed by research, you can see that it may not be from that particular supplement, just the horse looks good then. And then there's an emotional appeal to gain consumer insight and trust. That's huge with supplements that pull on the strings of the emotions. Whereas research-based is backed by peer-reviewed equine research and proven ingredients. Like I said earlier, these are research papers that you can find, and I have a resource at the end where you can see and pull the papers, or at least find out where they're at on the products that we have. Transparent about how they're reporting results in these research studies is also important. Endorsements by equine health experts, and research-based solutions. Okay.
Yeah.
What? Yep.
Yeah.
And well, they get peer reviewed, and there's researchers that come in and, So product wise, we have the three of the key products that Enviro Equine has: the Electro Balance, the Everyday Balance, and then the Gastro Balance Plus is where we have the majority of our technology in. Okay. The Electro Balance, which you guys put your show of hands on who uses Electro Balance. I know that's a popular one. Okay. Got a few over here. Great electrolyte. We have gone from a complex trace mineral pack in there to a true chelated trace mineral with our Bioplex. That's a big difference when it comes to bioavailability. It's almost over 90% bioavailable to the horse with our Bioplex trace minerals.
Can you explain that in immigrant language?
What's a chelate?
So, all right,
versus...
yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah. The best analogy that I have for it is when you think about a complex trace mineral. Okay, there's one bond that's really protecting that mineral through the horse's digestive system. Okay, whereas a true chelate has 4 to 5 different bonds, which is ours is a protonate that helps provide extra protection through the digestive tract to make sure that those minerals are bioavailable and are not being affected by the bacteria and the pH levels in the diet. So think about, I know I'm the guy up here, but football, American football. If you're a running back and you got 1 blocker or 4 blockers, that's how. It's the best analogy.
And the bioavailability with minerals is key. For a number of reasons. Obviously, you want your horse getting the most out of the product that you're using, but then also in regards to our environment and this crazy weather we're having and all of this, a lot of our minerals that we get in the United States are not as bioavailable, so they're going straight back into your water sources when your horse is peeing them out. So when we talk about supplements being the expensive pee, well, that means that you're not using the bioavailable mineral that you can, if that's the case. So
I don't know if
it's a
that
little bit of a different
analogy helped. I got we have other slides and things that get more deeper into the science, and there's some papers out there on our particular Bioplex product. So, okay, so then we can go. Then our Life Force formula is in our Alltech technology is in our Everyday Balance product, and we have our 4 key technologies that are in that product now. We've got our Bioplex trace minerals, which we just talked about, our chelates. We also have our organic selenium yeast, Cellplex, more bioavailable yeast than an inorganic, which is a huge difference here on selenium. Actogen is our prebiotic additive, and then YESAC, which is our pro and postbiotic. So you talk about gut health in Everyday Balance, we've loaded it with our 4 key additives that we have offered here within that. The other product has the kitchen sink thrown at it, basically. That's what I like to say. It's got the 4 key ones, like I just said. It's got Bioplex, YESAC, Actogen, and Cellplex. But we're also adding Integral A, which is our mycotoxin binder. So what happens with that additive is it helps protect the gut from toxins and pulls the toxins, actually tricks the toxins to latch onto it, and then pulls it through the digestive tract so it doesn't affect the villi within the gut tissue.
And where we're finding the toxins, just so you guys know, hay innately would have toxins. No matter how good your hay is, there might be some mold on it. Grain, no matter how great your grain is, it might have some mold on it. And a lot of horses that are toxic, you would almost think had ulcers, or they're tired, they're lethargic, they're it's a very interesting thing when you see the difference between a horse that is and isn't. And again, that helps mitigate those toxins that they can pick up from those various places internally and pass them through instead of.
Yeah, it's another level, just layer of protection in a product you're using for your horses. Deodories, we talked about that. That's also in the Gastro Plus product. And then we've got our digestive enzymes in there also. So anything that we can do with horses at Alltech is in the Gastro Plus product. The Everyday was designed for all different classes of horses, so we thought that the 4 key technologies would make the most sense at this point. But if you want all of our stuff and you're using a Gastro Plus type product, that would be your best bet. I feel like I've been up here dominating a little bit with some of the discussion, but the next 2 pages, I'm going to let you review on your own. It gets in depth. I've touched on some of the key additives here that are in the products, but you can read further and get a little bit more information on that. And then if you take your phone, we have created a equine solutions portfolio where you literally take your phone, scan the QR code, and it'll bring all of our core technologies for equine onto your phone. So you can review, it gives some information like feeding rates and things like that, which wouldn't really pertain, but it's got all of the key benefits that each one of the additives will provide the horse. And then the last page is we talked about research. This would be something I would read some of the papers. You could also get on our research bibliography. So what we've done is we've organized all of the papers that are attached to our different additives for the equine space and put them in this nice organized bibliography where you can scan it. You can find the white paper associated with which additive, and you can do your additional research on it that way. So that's what I have, and I appreciate it. Yeah, welcome. Thank you.
This is Dr. Shannon Pratt Phillips. We use her quite regularly as our PhD nutritionist. She's at NC State, but she is going to go over, she actually wrote all the Fact or Fiction questions and answers. So we'll start from the top. Dr. Shannon, if you want to just give a little bit of your background as well.
Yeah, sure. Hey, everybody. I'm from Toronto, Canada, originally, and I went off and did my my bachelor's was in nutrition, and then I did my master's degree at University of Kentucky in equine nutrition, and then I went back to Guelph in Canada for my PhD, and that was all in equine nutrition. So I finished that in 2004. I taught in Ohio for 2 years before I moved to NC State, so North Carolina State University. And I've been a professor there since 2006, so pushing 18 years, I guess, aging myself. And I teach equine science, so sort of my Horses 101. I also teach and train students who want to become equine nutritionists. So I have a graduate program. So if somebody wanted to do their master's or their PhD in equine nutrition, they could do it with me and I would do the research. And I also do consulting on the side. And so this is how I've sort of gotten to know Enviro Equine. I think they're a great product and they do, and I wouldn't do this for everybody, but I kind of have some products and companies that I do think have got some good work and research behind them. And so this is one of them. So I kind of am going to talk about some facts or fictions about nutrition, because this is something that these are questions that kind of all came from questions that I'm asked all the time. And so as I'm talking, feel free to stop me. I'll also say that I was a little bit unfair when I was making this, because there are quite a few things that are sort of trick questions. And so a lot of things with nutrition, as you'll find, is that it's not one simple answer. We usually have to, really look at an individual horse, and just like you can't feed one horse one thing and expect it to work like everybody else. And that's one of the reasons why, when somebody's just, saying, oh, I used it, so it works, so you should use it, and testimonials, because things don't always work for other horses. So while I've gone through this, again, just kind of take that with a little bit of little grain of salt, that some of them are not truly just fact or fiction. So the first one is horses need supplements.
So, one second. After each question, if you've answered it right, bring your, or maybe just, bring your quiz up to me and you get to pick a prize. So after each one, it might take us a minute, but. So Shannon, just so you realize.
Question. No. Yeah. All right. So my first question was, horses need supplements. And so maybe some of you said yay, and some of you said no, that's false. And maybe some of you are on the line. So Angela, you can kind of pick how you see that one. But basically, a lot of horses don't need supplements. A lot of horses do need supplements. And so it all comes down to what the
hold
horse
on one
needs as an
second.
individual.
Who answered that right versus it's false that horses need supplements.
All right, yes, don't steal all the prizes. But
this is Dr. Shannon Pratt Phillips. We use her quite regularly as our PhD nutritionist. She's at NC State. But she is going to go over, she actually wrote all the fact or fiction questions and answers. So we'll start from the top. Dr. Shannon, if you want to just give a little bit of your background as well.
Yeah, sure. Hey, everybody. I'm from Toronto, Canada, originally. And I went off and did my my bachelor's was in nutrition, and then I did my master's degree at University of Kentucky in equine nutrition, and then I went back to Guelph in Canada for my PhD, and that was all in equine nutrition. So I finished that in 2004. I taught in Ohio for 2 years before I moved to NC State, so North Carolina State University. And I've been a professor there since 2006, so pushing 18 years, I guess, aging myself. And I teach equine science, so sort of my Horses 101. I also teach and train students who want to become equine nutritionists. So I have a graduate program. So if somebody wanted to do their master's or their PhD in equine nutrition, they could do it with me and I would do the research. And I also do consulting on the side. And so this is how I've sort of gotten to know Enviro Equine. I think they're a great product and they do, and I wouldn't do this for everybody, but I kind of have some products and companies that I do think have got some good work and research behind them. And so this is one of them. So I kind of am going to talk about some facts or fictions about nutrition, because this is something that these are questions that kind of all came from questions that I'm asked all the time. And so as I'm talking, feel free to stop me. I'll also say that I was a little bit unfair when I was making this, because there are quite a few things that are, sort of trick questions. And so a lot of things with nutrition, as you'll find, is that it's not one simple answer. We usually have to, really look at an individual horse, and just like you can't feed one horse one thing and expect it to work like everybody else. And that's one of the reasons why, when somebody's just, saying, oh, I used it, so it works, so you should use it, and testimonials, because things don't always work for other horses. So while I've gone through this, again, just kind of take that with a little bit of little grain of salt, that some of them are not truly just fact or fiction. So the first one is horses need supplements.
One second. After each question, if you've answered it right, bring your or maybe just, bring your quiz up to me, and you get to pick a prize. So after each one, it might take us a minute, but so Shannon, just so you realize.
Question. No. Yeah. All right. So my first question was, horses need supplements. And so maybe some of you said yay, and some of you said no, that's false. And maybe some of you are on the line. So Angela, you can kind of pick how you see that one. But basically, a lot of horses don't need supplements. A lot of horses do need supplements. And so it all comes down to what the
hold
horse
on one
needs as an
second.
individual.
Who answered that right versus it's false that horses need supplements.
I did the other one because I was like, we're talking about supplements.
Well, that's the point. So yeah.
Sounds good. All right, so that really was a trick question, because it all comes down to what a horse needs and what else they're getting. So good quality hay and pasture and water can provide like almost all of the nutrients that a horse needs, in particular pasture, because it does add some additional vitamins that wouldn't be in hay. And then some horses are going to be fed various feed commercial products that are already going to be fortified with additional nutrients. And so if you are feeding good quality hay or pasture, lots of water, and good quality horse feed at the appropriate rate, then it is possible that your horse is getting all of the nutrients that it needs. But also say that most horse owners that I know, you ask them how much they're feeding, and then you compare that to what's on the bag, and it doesn't match up. So people are not feeding what's suggested by the food company. So it's kind of like taking, if you're drinking an Ensure as your main source of nutrition, but you're only drinking a quarter of it. Then you're not going to get the full benefit of that whole bottle. And so there are times like that when a horse might need to be topped up in certain nutrients. And there are also different types of supplements that are not necessarily nutrients that do have a health benefit. So for example, things like many of the Alltech compounds, like the biomass and the probiotics and the prebiotics within that section. So cool. All right. And then my next one is kind of easy too then. All supplements are nutritional supplements. How many of you put true for that? Just give a raise of hands. How many of you said false? That's probably good. And that's because there are nutritional supplements that do provide specific nutrients. There are 6 classes of the nutrients: water, carbohydrates, fats, proteins, vitamins, and minerals. And so if you're giving something that is one of those things, then it is a nutritional supplement. But there are all kinds of supplements that don't actually have nutritional substances, such as probiotics, prebiotics, flavonoids, and some of these other compounds that potentially have very important health benefits, but they're not specifically nutrients. Cool? And just stop me if you have any questions. All right. My next question is probably one that Angela gets a lot. Electrolytes should include sugar. How many of you said yes, they should include sugar? Oh, how many of you said no, they should not? That's all right.
It's really funny, that question, because the science people say they need sugar because they read what you and I would read. But then the masses say, well, we don't want to feed our horses sugar. So it's kind of, it depends on the person that you're talking to. Either they think they need sugar in order to make it work from things they've read on the internet, or we don't want any sugar in our horse's diet. It's kind of, it's an interesting, it's one or the, obviously one or the other, but.
And so I'll give you the little bit of science about sodium, which is the key part of salt and the most important electrolyte that your horses are going to be getting from an electrolyte supplement. So sodium is absorbed from the digestive tract into the bloodstream in a partnership with sugar. So you have to have glucose for that sodium to be absorbed. And so that's why a lot of electrolyte products do have sugar into them. But a lot of them have so much sugar. You'll see it listed as the very first ingredient. That's just kind of silly, because when are you guys feeding your electrolytes? How are you mixing it and giving it to your food, to your horses? You're probably mixing it and putting it on their food that they're already eating. And so there's already going to be some sugar in those diets. Even on like these low NSC and the low sugar diets, there's still always going to be some sugar, glucose that your horse is taking in that's going to be in their digestive tract that can carry the sodium in. So you do not have to have sugar added into an electrolyte. Cool? All right. So this is another one that kind of confuses my students sometimes. Yeah. Organic minerals are created without the use of pesticides or herbicides.
Long lines.
I have a question regarding.
Yes, please.
So what proportion?
Sorry.
What proportion of glucose and sodium? Like, is it like, what ratio does it need to be?
That's a great question. And so to be absorbed, it's a 1-to-1 ratio.
She's also translating, so.
Oh, okay.
It takes a moment.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, and so for example, like an average horse requires 10 grams of sodium. And let's say you guys are all in Wellington. Let's say you've got a show jumper down there. He might need 26 grams of salt. And so that would be 26 grams of sugar, which is really not a whole lot and is easily going to be in his diet.
Okay.
All right. And does that make sense, or do you want me to carry on?
Yeah,
or
that makes sense.
Okay, cool. All right, so then my other question was about organic minerals. And so the term organic has two different meanings. So one of them is when we go off to Whole Foods and Trader Joe's and we're looking for things in foods that have been grown or raised without pesticides, herbicides, or even hormones and things like that. The other way that the term organic refers to is coming down to molecular structure, and it's going to refer to compounds that have carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen associated with them. So the main parts of our body are, not other than our bones, but like our muscles and our skin and everything like that is largely made of proteins and fats, and those are all based off of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. And so when we talk about organic minerals, we're actually talking about minerals, so something that is inorganic, something like selenium, and it's becoming organic because it's bound to a compound that is built up with carbon and hydrogen and oxygen. And again, that's what Tim was talking about with the different binding points and stuff like that. And so when you've got a molecule, nutrient, for example, selenium, that you want to be absorbed by your horse so that they can use it, being bound to an organic horse, again, just something that's got carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, just kind of the bodybuilders of life, proteins, amino acids, etc., those can help bring those organic nutrients across. And then that kind of steals into my next question then too. Organic minerals are absorbed more efficiently than inorganic compounds. And that is true for all of the minerals that have been tested. There are probably others that we just don't know about, but for the ones that we have tested, and it's a lot of Alltech has done all of that work, or much of it. So when you're looking at zinc or selenium or copper, many of those, if they're from Alltech or a couple other companies, you'll notice that they're in some kind of complex with other organic compounds. And so it does actually help them be more available so that they can be absorbed and cross across the cells of the digestive tract. So that was just kind of carrying on, I guess, from what Tim had introduced.
4 was false.
All right.
Yeah.
4 is false, 5 is true.
5 is true. Yep. And so 6.
All right, 6, yes. Analyzing a horse's hay should be part of any nutritional program analysis. Yes, that is a big true. So when I go and I look at a horse's diet, I go into Excel and I basically add up all of the different nutrients that are coming from every single food group. And if I don't have a hay analysis, I can go to a database where companies have analyzed thousands of different batches of hay, and I can get their means, their averages across, years, or I could even go down and try to look at a specific region. But the only way to know exactly what is in your hay, exactly how much protein or calcium or phosphorus or even zinc or copper or anything, is to go and have it analyzed. And so especially if you're actually paying for someone to analyze your diet, it's so much better to spend that extra $32 and get your hay analyzed so that you know exactly what's in it. And I know that costs money. Like a lot of times, especially if you guys are off showing, you might just be getting in new hay every week, and you might not know the consistency of it. And so maybe that's not ideal, but maybe when you get back to your home barns, or if you do happen to be at a facility where you can have a lot of hay, you should definitely get that tested, at least so that you know at that point in time when your horse's diet is being analyzed, you know exactly what's in the hay, and so you know exactly what your horse is consuming from that hay. And then from there, balancing the rest of the diet with feed or supplements is going to be way more accurate. And then, if you do have different hay that comes in all the time, again, it just kind of depends on the quality of your horse. I mean, if you have a, 6-figure plus kind of horse, you probably do want to be pretty careful with what it's eating, and you can get it analyzed. And also regarding some of those toxins, if you do go and send your hay for analysis, you can actually also send it in to get several feed and forage toxins analyzed as well. So that can also help you decide if that hay is even something you want to start with feeding your horse, or if you want to just walk away. So hay analysis is always super important. Are there any questions about that one?
Yes. So
yes.
So it's very hard sometimes
Yep.
to get the owner or to the trainer or the rider, whatever is in charge there. How is the best approach that to them? Because it can be a tricky question.
So yeah, that's a great question. And I've worked at as a groom myself, and I definitely know that in many cases, most of the grooms know far more than the riders or trainers about what that horse is actually getting and what they should be getting. Is that a laugh in agreement? I did a survey at Spruce Meadows many years ago, and I basically walked through the barns and I asked what everybody was feeding. And I'll say, and this was before the Normandy World Equestrian Games, and I'll tell you probably half of the big Olympic types of riders said, go talk to my groom, I have no idea. There were 2 that actually sat down with me and were like, okay, I'm going to tell you about my food plan because I think it's good and I've done the research. But anyway, so I totally get that. And so I think it does, it is worthwhile having that conversation with your trainer, especially if you think there is reason to, look deeper at your horse's diet. If they're not performing where they should be, or if you, even as you're feeding the hay, if you notice that it's changing frequently, if you notice that it's really, really stemmy, if you notice that it's overly dusty, if it doesn't smell all that great, those are all kinds of things that can potentially, suggest that, maybe it's time to look deeper into the quality of hay that you're feeding. And so that might be something, to go and look at. There are also free nutrition evaluations that you can do online. And even without a hay analysis, and so just using sort of book values and stuff, you could, for free, go and analyze one of the horses in your barns and go and look at their diets and analyze it. And, if you see that it's way off, then that might be a time to have a conversation with your trainer and see if they want to get up with, a feed company or a supplement company or a nutritionist, to really see if that will be helpful for them. But yes, I totally get that, sometimes, the riders just get on and get off and might not care as much. But I think you'll also agree that the good ones do.
A lot of people work for the non-good ones, unfortunately. Sorry.
You can do next.
Sorry, what was that?
No, nothing. It's okay. You can keep going.
Okay. Okay. All right. All right. And so here's another one. So again, you might have a horse owner or your trainer come up and say, I don't think my horse is doing well. Why don't you go ahead and pull blood on it and see if it's missing anything in its diet? And that, so that question was, blood work can pinpoint nutritional deficiencies or toxicities. And the answer to that is false, mostly. So if you're consuming more calcium than your body needs, blood calcium stays extremely stable. There are two hormones that all they do is regulate blood calcium concentrations. And so if you eat too much calcium, another one of these hormones kicks in, it puts calcium into the bone, and then if that's full, it will send it out to the urine. And then another hormone, if your blood calcium is too low because your diet is too low, it will actually tell the bone to get rid of calcium from the bone and put it into the blood. And so your blood calcium concentrations will stay very, very stable, even if the diet is totally out of whack. And so the only way that you would know if your calcium is totally way out of whack, ideally it's not after the fact when you're doing a bone density scan because your horse is hurt. Hopefully it's ahead of time when you've been looking at their diet. And so most of the nutrients are truly like that. They will stay in very controlled levels. And, a good way to test this is if you don't take multivitamins, go ahead and take a multivitamin. And what you'll notice is your urine is probably going to smell and look a little different. And that's because most of those vitamins, especially, you already have in your body, and you're just going to flush them out anyway. And so the body's very, very good at tracking minerals and most vitamins, and so that the body's concentrations stay the same. The only real caveat to that one in particular is vitamin E. And vitamin E is kind of interesting because when horses are at pasture, there's tons of vitamin E in pasture, and also beta carotene, which is a precursor for vitamin A. And so during spring, summer, towards the end of fall, there's going to be plenty of vitamin A that can actually be stored into the liver. And then when we start transitioning over to hay and there isn't as much pasture, the body's going to use up those stores in the liver. And then eventually those blood concentrations are going to start to go down. And so vitamin E, in particular, vitamin A is a little bit more resistant to this. Vitamin A concentrations can tell you if your horse is deficient in vitamin E, but also there are some horses that even when they're being fed a lot of vitamin E, they still have low vitamin E concentrations. They're just not very well able to absorb them. And so, when your vet comes in and if they're pulling Coggins, or if you've got a little fat pony and they're doing a metabolic profile on them, go ahead and ask them to pull some vitamin E as well. And you can track that throughout the year. And you do want to make sure that not only is it staying stable in the winter months when your horse is eating hay, but also if you're supplementing it, that you're getting a response from that supplement.
So it can pinpoint nutritional deficiencies then.
Just vitamin E.
Well, I know, but that's still nutritional deficiency.
I knew that these are like strict answers, true or false. So, but yes, other than vitamin E, it is a complete waste of time. And I'll kind of trickle into the next one, which is hair analysis can reflect dietary mineral status. And that, I guess I've got my little caveat to that too. That is also false. Other than heavy metals like arsenic or, lead, things like that can build up in the body and show up in the hay. But general minerals, copper, zinc, all of those don't. There are a couple studies that have tried to look at diet and hair. We have done numerous ones at NC State. The problem is anytime you are trying to analyze hair and putting it through any kind of machine to burn it, to start to look at those minerals, it comes into contact with steel. And steel has a whole bunch of minerals in it. Or anything that you're using, if you're cutting, using scissors to cut your horse's hair, that's contributing minerals to it. So the environmental contamination of hair is so extreme. We were trying to look at chromium in hair quality, and there was completely bonkers. There was no relationship whatsoever. And about both of those different tests, I was at a conference last year, and one of the presenters was telling me that she went and took hair from, let's call her Sophie, who was a 10-year-old quarter horse that had some gastric ulcers and was, doing Western pleasure. And then also a hair analysis from, let's say, Clyde, who was a 20-year-old thoroughbred off the racetrack and was still doing some lower level eventing. She sent them in. They got two completely different reports. And of course, the companies were suggesting them to go and give them all these different supplements. And in fact, it was the same hair from the same horse. She had just lied when submitting those samples. And she did the exact same thing with blood work. She sent it to one of these companies that said, I'm going to test your blood for allergies and for mineral content. And she did the same thing. She submitted it with two very different profiles. She even sent it under different names and different addresses. She got the reports back. They were completely different, even though they were literally taken by the same horse at the same time. So a lot of those companies that try to sell you on those are completely out of touch. So be very, very careful with those things. The only way to know if your horse is getting the nutrients that it needs is to test the diet. And again, getting that hay analysis will make it even more accurate. Are there any questions about that? All right, cool. Horses should not get soy in their diet. This is another big fad thing that people are talking about with soy. People are very scared of soy, either because it's, potentially genetically modified, or because it can be associated with phytoestrogens. And in fact, there is no science, no research that is being conducted in horses that suggests that soy can have any negative impact on horses. However, if you want to say that your horse is sensitive to soy, there are other protein sources out there. I will say that soy is truly one of the very best protein sources for horses. It's got a lot of protein per unit weight, and it's got a very good profile of all of the amino acids that a horse requires. And so if you're going to avoid feeding soy, you have to look somewhere else. So whether that's another type of seed meal, or if that's pea protein or whey or casein, you do have to, look into something else to make up for those proteins. All right, another one. Horses know what is good for them and will seek out nutrients they are lacking. This is, again, false, but mostly false. The only nutrient that animals can actually seek out is sodium. That's why you will see deer going onto a highway trying to lick the salt off the roads. So if you see a horse eating dirt, they might be trying to get salt, or they are just bored. They're not seeking out extra copper or anything like that. There's quite a bit of research on that in horses and many other species. All right, again, stop me if I'm going too fast. Gastric ulcers can be of concern of any horse. This is true. There have been studies of horses that are just out at pasture and they have gastric ulcers. We know that our racehorses have gastric ulcers. We know that a lot of our sport horses have gastric ulcers. Our little fat ponies have gastric ulcers. Any horse can develop gastric ulcers. So if you're noticing any kind of behavioral symptoms when they're being girthy or, just kind of acting up under saddle where they might seem like they're uncomfortable, then you should probably get a look with your vet. And diagnosis with an endoscope is really the only way that you can prove whether or not your horse has gastric ulcers, and then if a gastric ulcer medication regime has worked. Okay, another one that I get asked a lot, non-structural carbohydrates are bad for horses. This is false. So non-structural carbohydrates are basically starches and sugars. So if you think about a plant, and you remember your, grade 11 biology, and you learned about a cell wall, maybe this was even earlier than that, you know that cells in plants have a cell wall around them, and then the cell membrane. And then on the inside of that, they have all of the protein and the fats. Well, fats are in the membrane too, but all kinds of sugars and stuff like that on the inside. So when we think about the carbohydrates that are in a plant, we have what we call structural carbohydrates, and that's going to be the fiber that's making up the cell wall. And then the non-structural carbohydrates, which are going to be the starches and the sugars. All horses do need some sugar in their diet, partly just to absorb that sodium, but also to fuel all of the reactions that happen in the body. When our body is exercising or trying to have enzymatic processes take place, we require this compound called ATP, adenosine triphosphate, and that requires either fat or carbohydrate and sugar in particular, or protein to some degree, able to be metabolized to produce that ATP. And if you do not have sugar available to go through this metabolic process, your body will have to start to break down protein, and that's going to break down muscle protein. So horses do have to have some non-structural carbohydrate in their diet. And in fact, show jumpers, eventers, racehorses, polo ponies, our barrel racers, all of our horses that have big spurts of high power work, they have to have not just glucose, but they actually are storing glycogen, which is like starch in a potato. So in the body, we store sugar as glycogen within our muscle and our liver, but in particularly that muscle glycogen is what the muscle is going to use for immediate power. It's going to metabolize it very quickly and give that animal power. So if you've got a show jumper and you're trying to feed it a low non-structural carbohydrate diet, it's probably not going to be terribly successful. All right, where am I now? Okay, 13. Athletic horses need to be fed a higher percentage of protein in their feed. And so probably many of you will go and have your perhaps Happy Hunter feed, or maybe for your retirees, that might be 12% protein. And then when you go off and you buy the one for your show jumpers or eventers, you're going to be looking at something that's probably got 14% protein. And the truth is, you probably don't need to have that higher percentage of protein in the diet, because your horse is already going to be eating more so that they can get their calories. We do lose some protein, and so there is a slightly higher protein requirement in the horses that are exercising, but it's not to the same degree as calories. And because horses are going to have to take in more calories just to do that athletic activity, they're going to have to be consuming more food, which is probably going to have some protein in it anyway. And Angela, I don't know if they're going to get my written out answers also, but I have my little math equations for those two to show that. All right. Keep on rolling. We're good on timing?
Yeah.
Okay. The next one, alfalfa hay is too rich for most horses. And this is actually true, but I've got that caveat for most horses. Alfalfa hay is extremely high in protein. So on a percentage base, it's usually anywhere from 16 to even 20% protein. and it also has a ton of calcium. And because it's got higher protein, it actually also has higher calories per unit weight. And so if you are feeding your horse alfalfa hay, and it doesn't need that much protein, which is the majority of our horses out there, then that protein is basically coming out. It's being broken down, and the nitrogen has to come out in the urine, and you're basically creating very expensive, smelly bedding. So alfalfa, while it can be, horses that are growing in particular could use some additional protein. And so maybe you could have some alfalfa in there in addition to the grass hays, but you should not be feeding straight alfalfa hay to any horse. Even your thoroughbred racehorses, as they're growing, it's probably still a little bit too much for them to have straight alfalfa. All right, another question that I'm asked a lot, I've done a lot of work on iron, is that ratios are important when it comes to minerals. And there are really only two ratios that there has been scientific evidence to prove that they are in fact real ratios that the horse needs to require in certain amounts. And so one of them is calcium and phosphorus. Calcium should always be in about a 2-to-1 ratio, calcium to phosphorus. But it can really be anywhere from like 1.1 part calcium to 1 part phosphorus, all the way up to 8 or 9 parts calcium to phosphorus. As long as you're meeting your horse's basic calcium and phosphorus needs, which is going to be 20 grams for your idle 500 kilogram horse, and then 14 for your for phosphorus for your average type of keeper, then you're okay as long as you're within that ratio. The reason is so obviously you have to get that 20 and the 14, and that's going to be increased if you've got a bigger horse, so they've got higher requirements. But the 2-to-1 has to do with how calcium and phosphorus are absorbed from the digestive tract. And so you always have to have some free calcium that can be absorbed that's not bound to phosphorus, because a lot of that will happen within the digestive tract. And then the other one is zinc and copper. So they have been shown to, if you feed too much zinc, it can inhibit copper absorption. And so that's why you need a 4-to-1 ratio for for zinc to copper. And I always remember that one, zinc has 4 letters, so 1, 2, 3, 4. It should be 4-to-1 with copper. Biotin is important for hoof health. Yes, this is true. Is the only B vitamin that has actually been shown to have an additive health benefit to horses when fed in excess of what the requirements are estimated to be. And maybe our requirements were just too low. But if you feed additional biotin to a horse that has poor crumbly feet, it will improve their hoof quality. And there have been several studies that have looked at that. It's probably even better if you go and add some additional nutrients to help support the hoof growth, but it's biotin that is going to be the one that should be in every single hoof formulation. And sometimes it's not. A lot of, for chaseberry, which is the scientific name is Vitex agnus castus, because they think it improves Cushing's syndromes. There's actually been no research at all that has actually suggested that. And in fact, one study where they were comparing the chaseberry versus pergolide, which is the medical management for Cushing's disease, they actually found that the chaseberry made the symptoms worse. So if you are feeding a supplement for an older horse that might have Cushing's disease, you're much better off to just go and get the pergolide than to try to supplement with an herb that doesn't have as much backing behind it. And I'll go on with this one because research in humans demonstrate efficacy in horses. This is what Tim was talking about. We have to rely on a lot of research from a lot of species because research is extremely expensive to do. And so a lot of times we do have to base things on research that's been done in humans, in rodents, and other livestock species. But it's really difficult to make interpretations from research that has come from humans. And so, for example, that chaseberry does have a lot of decent data in humans that it can help with some even symptoms of menopause and things like that. But it does not have that same effect in horses. And there are lots of other examples where something that works in humans or even a different species is not good for horses. Big name commercial feeds are bad. This is something that I get a lot. I get a lot of requests for which feed products to use. And people say, oh, I want to steer away from the big Purinas and the Nutrinas and things like that of the world. I like that are big. I have companies that I like that are small. And it really doesn't have anything to do with the size. It actually has to do with the quality control, the ingredients, the products themselves, and who their PhD nutritionists are. And so, for example, Purina has some of the very best equine nutritionists in the world. And all they do is do research and formulate feeds for horses. Now, some of them are, some of their products are higher end and more expensive. And those are ones and then there are also ones that are lower end that might be, not necessarily what you want to feed. But companies that are big do have buying power. They have laboratory facilities. We were talking about Alltech is a massive company. It has all kinds of facilities to do research and testing. And big companies do have that. And so there are some excellent big companies that have excellent products out there. And there are medium companies that are excellent, and there are medium and small companies that are terrible, because anybody can literally say, I want to make horse food and sell it without any knowledge background of nutrition. Some good small companies and medium companies will hire consulting nutritionists to help them develop products. And those might not be listed on the websites because, those people who do it might do it for a couple different companies trying to make a living. So they might not list their names on the website. So it's up to you. If you want to look into other companies, you should contact them and say, do you have a PhD nutritionist on staff? Who are they? They're actually an equine nutritionist and not a cattle nutritionist, etc. But a lot of the big companies, they do have that buying power to get some pretty good nutritionists on board. Also, any company that spends more money on marketing than the research on their products is probably not a company that you should be super excited about. Fortified feeds and complete feeds are the same thing. This kind of, again, comes into, I get this a lot when people are, going into a feed room and they look at the different labels that it says on feeds. And so commercial feeds can be found as like fortified feeds. And so most of our feeds are going to be a mix of cereal grains, protein, vitamins, and minerals. And they're designed for specific classes of horses. And they're designed to be fed in addition to hay. And so if you look at their instructions, it will say this product should be fed with this much hay for this much body weight of a horse. Some feeds are complete feeds, and they're literally designed for horses that cannot eat hay, or maybe hay is not available. Maybe there's been a drought and hay prices have gone up and you can't afford hay. Complete feeds are designed to be fed so that all you need to do, it's going to provide the complete nutrition for your horse. So it's going to have all of that added fiber that a horse would normally be getting from their hay, and it's all into one complete feed. And then ration balancers are the proteins, the vitamins, and minerals without those cereal grains and without those added calories that come from them. Feeding more protein will result in muscle growth and improved top line. Also false. Just like I can't just go and eat a whole bunch of eggs or go off and buy a bunch of whey protein, I am not going to develop abs of steel and bulk up. You have to have exercise in combination with key amino acids. So leucine is actually been shown to activate some of the muscle growth regulators. But exercise is going to be the dominant trigger to activate those systems to synthesize muscle. And so if you want your horse to build top line, yes, you have to look at its diet, but really you also have to do exercises that are appropriate to develop those muscles. And then I think my last one is, if switching from a sweet feed, sort of what we call a textured feed, to a pelleted feed, you will need to feed less of the pelleted feed. And this is assuming they are the exact same food. So you can buy one of the Purina, I can't remember which it is. You can buy in a pelleted form or textured, so it looks like a sweet feed. They have the exact same ingredients, the exact same guaranteed analysis, just one is a sweet feed, one is a pellet. Now, if you were to weigh them in your scoop, pelleted feeds are denser. Even though you look at a sweet feed and you look at all that molasses, because those oats and grains are actually, for the most part, light and fluffy, pelleted feeds are usually going to be heavier than a sweet feed. And so if you were just going and switching from one type to the next without weighing it, and you're just going from one scoop to the next, you would be in trouble. And ultimately, my sort of key point for that is that you should feed by weight and not volume. So if you're feeding 2 pounds of a certain feed and you're switching to another one, and if it's got the same guaranteed analysis, you're going to be able to feed the same amount of that one. But you should always be feeding by weight and not by coffee cans or scoops. Because as a nutritionist, I have no idea how much coffee you drink and how big that coffee can is. All right, so I think I went over a little bit, but hopefully you stuck around long enough to get those.
All right. Any questions on any of those? We're good? And now we'll have a line to get your prizes, but if you guys want to collect on each of the right answers, you're more than welcome to come up and grab a few things.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Shannon.
You bet. Are there any questions? I'm glad to answer questions if anybody wanted to come over to the microphone so I can.
Okay. All right. Let's one by one. Let's see.
Thank you.
And do we have totals of right